just go through with the other Irish players who are starting to make a name for themselves in the new Premiership season?
Yeah, I suppose the one thing about Evan Ferguson that strikes me is his physique for a young lad. Normally, in the past, Irish players with an awful lot of promise would have maybe 18 or 19-year-olds would have maybe showed glimpses. Maybe it might have come on for cameo roles off the bench, but would have been deemed as maybe too light for the Premier League, might have been deemed maybe not up to the physical demands, and would have been pushed off out on loan maybe to feeder clubs in League Two and League One, and would have sort of got lost in their system. And by the time they would have come back in, the other players would have come in the door, they would have dropped down the pecking order, managers would have changed. But I think for Ferguson's, what has really made his success story really come to fruition is the club that he's in is Brighton. If he was in a club like Man City or Liverpool or Manchester United or Arsenal, he mightn't have got the opportunity that he's gotten. But Brighton are always about trying to find these young gems and try to bring them through and nurture them from scratch. I mean, there's a great example of Rory Delap's son, Liam Delap, who was talked about as the next prodigy at Man City, scoring goals for fun at underage and international level with the Man City reserves as well, but never really got a look in, and now he's finding himself out in his second, I think it's his second loan spell now, the Championship, and struggling really to get game time at Hull City for a guy that would have, at the start, people were talking about declaring him for England and talking about 15-20 million. So I think it's the club where you find the right circumstances has been very important to Evan Ferguson. And I do feel maybe that he offers something different than what Brighton had up front, in terms of like Danny Welbeck is a guy who likes to maybe run in behind. But Brighton never really had that sort of target man in the last few years. And I think maybe De Zerbi has seen something in terms of his hold-up play and his ability to bring in others to the play, and has really given him his chance rather than going out the transfer market and splashing 20 or 30 million, the likes of what a West Ham or a Tottenham might have done. So I think it's a blessing in disguise for Everton. It's been for Evan Ferguson. It's been a blessing in disguise for Brighton as well, and it's really good to see it. But for Irish young players, it's one success story and a million, and it all depends on what club you land yourself. And Evan's been lucky that he's landed himself.
Sorry, Jim, for cutting the question. I'll just give Noel a quick talk about Ferguson, and then I'll come back to you again. So, Noel, just a quick reaction to Ferguson. He's making up there, and he's progressing.
Well, yeah, he came into the team, I think, just after Christmas. It was against Arsenal, if not mistaken. He made his debut up to question, and he scored a goal. And he looked a big physique player, and like Jim said, he's only 18, and it's fantastic to see. Jim also mentioned about young Irish players getting lost to the system. I think that's bang on, because there was a player a couple of years ago in Tottenham, Troy Parrott. Now, I heard a lot about him. I saw a lot of videos of him underage. He was playing well underage with Ireland as well. But instead, he got lost to the system. He was at Tottenham when the time when Mourinho was there, and of course Mourinho is like, I know from the Chelsea fan, he likes the ready-made players, so he didn't get much of a chance. I think he had a game against in the League Cup. He missed a penalty in the penalty shootout, and a couple of weeks later he put still down on loan. And as far as I know, he's at the Dutch club now. I think is it Alkmaar or something. Yeah. So Jim's bad on there. Like, young Irish players get lost to the system. Hopefully he'll come good. And I think his injury record isn't great either. But to get back to Evan Ferguson, I think he's a smashing young lad. I think there's talk of him, like, when the English are talking a lot about him, and they're thinking, oh, we could declare England. That means we got a gem in our hand. Lucky enough now, he's played a few qualifiers for Ireland, so he's in the system. He's our player. We haven't got another Rice or Grealish situation on our hands either. So because his mother's English, that's why he qualifies for England as well. I think he's going to be. There's talk already that in the next transfer window, maybe not January, actually, maybe in the summer, that if he keeps performing the way he's performing, he could go for, like, Brighton are very good negotiators. Being a Chelsea fan myself, I know damn well how much they put the prices for their players. There's talk that was someone saying that he could go for 100 million. So he's levels above everyone in the Irish squad. Let's face it. Most of our players, some of our players sometimes don't even start in the Premier League. He's starting and starring in it. Yeah. So I think he's got a bright future ahead. Injury. Hopefully, injuries won't be a thing in a couple of years, but he can go to the top.
Yeah. Okay, Jim. Just go back to you now, Jim. I will leave Evan Ferguson there, and best luck to him. We hope he progresses. Is there any other young Irish players maybe starting to come through in the Premiership first of all, maybe get into the squads? And we know all the Premiership teams now, the big squads. It isn't like years ago when there was only maybe 15 or 16 players, but now you have 20, 25 players. So is there any other young players starting to come through, Irish players in the Premiership clubs?
I suppose the Premiership, but you also have to look at the Championship as well. The Championship now is a high quality league that compared to most leagues in Europe. But in terms of the Premier League, obviously you have the mainstays like John Egan is a permanent fixture in the Sheffield United defence. Darragh O'Shea's moved there to Burnley. Excitingly, there in the January transfer window, the August transfer window saw Andrew Daly move from Norwich to Nottingham Forest, and I think that could be a good move for Daly. Obviously, Nottingham Forest have problems in their defence. I think he's going to be thrown in there straight from the off anyway. And that's going to really bring him on a ton playing Premier League football. I was hoping that I'd see, whether it's injury, but Chidozie, I was hoping Chidozie would be a leading light in the Luton team this year up front after making the move from Rotterdam to Luton Town. Chidozie Ogbene, he's really proven himself at international level. I do feel he has got Premier League quality, but it remains to see whether he'll get to game time. But they are the sort of main ones. Festus Ebezzoli is doing well out in Udinese in the Italian Serie A. But a guy that has really caught my eye now in the last month or two, playing with Queen's Park Rangers. He's playing as a lone striker there. He's with our under-21s there, Sinclair Armstrong. I think there's an awful lot of potential in this guy. He's a big, robust, physical unit as well. Bit of raw pace in him and sort of stuff like that. Ability to hold off the defenders. And he definitely has that physique and maybe raw pace as well. And maybe that's a blossoming partnership. The idea of Ferguson and Sinclair to definitely be a handful for defences up front. And if you O'Benny then out the sideline, providing the supply lines, that would be promising. It's probably more defensive midfield options that I'd be sort of worrying about now at the moment in terms of Ireland. Maybe that anchor man, that like Roy Keane type, we just don't seem to have.
No, Jim, now in fairness, no, the likes of Roy Keane don't come along every day of the week, as you. But anyway, Jim, have you any thoughts that now being a young player, or Jim, no, I should say, whether in the Championship or the Premiership, younger players, maybe they were maybe around for a while now and they're maybe getting a transfer there and maybe starting to come through with the clubs in the Championship or Premiership. Anyone is catching your eye?
Yeah, Aaron Connolly now, he made the breakthrough to McCarthy's reign there now. He was playing very good, but unfortunately he just didn't keep his performances up. He's at home now. I think it's a permanent transfer if I'm not mistaken. He seems to be playing quite well. Ryan Manning seems to be able to get into the squad at long last. I think there was a big call for him to be into the squad. I think he's playing out at Swansea City, so he's in the squad. There are two players now. I would hope now that Steve McKinney make use of now in this international break now for the clubs and get into the. It'll make a sober start, maybe not start, but definitely get minutes off the bench. I think as I said, I think Jim covered the Premier League. Unfortunately, I looked through the squad. I think bearing a few injuries, Seamus Coleman's out injured and stuff like that. I think went out through the squad. There's about 10, 12 players are playing in the Premier League that I can list off the top of my head now. So it's more or less the Championship. It's mostly where we're playing. We even have a player in League Two, James McLean, and he just gone there, Wrexham. But
sorry for cutting across you, but in fairness to James McLean, he's over 100 caps, but he's coming to the very end of his career. So we all know in every sport you have to have players coming through. The greatest of great players will always retire or come to the end of their career. So it's hugely important that you have younger players coming through. So just a quick, Jim, can I go back to you? You mentioned at the start there about the clubs are at. Is it sometimes, we'll go to Ferguson at Brighton, can it be a disadvantage to be at the top 4 or 5 clubs who are competing in the Champions League, who, as Jim said, Marino and managers like that, they want a ready-made player. So maybe can it be an advantage for 2 or 3 years to have a player maybe in a club down the ranks? The example is the goalkeeper of Liverpool, and Kelleher. He's not getting much of a game or in the League Cup or so. So maybe it can be stunting his development. So just your thoughts on that. Is it important if an Irish player comes through with in the Premiership or on the top of the Championship, not to be in the top 4 or 5 teams who are contesting in Europe as well, but they won't get a break? What do you think of that?
I'd be firmly in agreement. If I was giving advice to Evan Ferguson, I'd be telling him to stay put in Brighton for another 3 or 4 years. It's a blossoming sort of project going on at Brighton at the moment. He's no chance. There's no chance Brighton are going to be dragged further down the lead or into a relegation problem. It looks like they're a steady Premier League outfit now, and for a young striker learning his trade, it's a place to be. I'd be strongly advising against Evan Ferguson for moving at this stage in his career. I think for him now, 3 or 4 years at Brighton will do him the world of good. But you mentioned that. I suppose if you're a young Irish player and if you're a young Irish striker at the moment, wouldn't you love to be maybe at a club like Everton, who are just crying out for a striker to maybe bang in the goals? If you're a young sort of prospect there, the opportunities and chances that you would probably get maybe at an Everton, maybe at a Sheffield United, maybe Luton Town, maybe clubs like that, maybe a Crystal Palace. I mean, these are all this type of mid-team Premier League clubs that don't go out and spend massive amounts like your Aston Villas, like your West Hams, who try and buy ready-made talent. And I think for players, maybe it's all about the team and the environment you find in. I mean, if you're a young Irish player at Crystal Palace, you probably have a better opportunity of making a breakthrough than a young Irish player at Aston Villa, because Aston Villa can come around each transfer market and spend 60, 70 million easily due to their net turnover. Same with West Ham, same with Tottenham, teams like that. So it's about finding the right home really for these guys, and Ferguson at Brighton's a classic example of that.
Yeah, James, Noel, just come back to you. 2 points. Number one, they're professionals, and in the day, they're there to make money, and they're all agents. And while Jim is 100% correct in my opinion, but if a club comes in and the young player 18, 19, I'm not talking about Ferguson, but just in general, and his agent tells him there's a huge transfer in, there's a huge salary coming to you, it's very hard for the young player 19, 20 to go to one of the top clubs. There's a huge salary and money on the table, as the man said, and just a quick thought on that. It's a very hard, and also sorry as well. We all know these are individuals. They have to bond together. Do you know what I mean? You go into a top team, you're going to have players from all over the world who are internationals, maybe winning European championships, in contesting World Cups. Then maybe the young player might be able to settle in. So just know that first point is the money on the table. Does that really count? And if they do go into a big club, will they be able to settle and maybe develop in personally, and then eventually develop on the pitch with their skills?
Yeah, I sort of get your point there, Paul. I think 3 or 4 years for Jim, for Evan Ferguson to be at Brighton is a bit optimistic. I think the money is going to come in eventually. I think maybe not the next, maybe like I said, maybe not in January, but certainly in the summer. If he continues the form that he has, I can see big clubs coming. He's been linked with Tottenham, he's been linked with Arsenal. But you know, if the one club the one club that probably most need him at the top is probably with Chelsea. But I think given our fiasco, I think that's probably one thing he's going to stay clear of. I do think next summer, if say he gets something like 20 league goals, let's just put a number on it.
Yeah.
20 league goals, plays well in Europe, plays well in the cups, is banging form. A big club, I'm not saying that Brighton is a small club, but a club now with the stature of an Arsenal or Tottenham are going to come in. Not City, because they've got Haaland. And Manchester United are after spending 70 million on a striker themselves. So Arsenal or Tottenham, I believe, are going to come in.
How about Newcastle, Noel? They have plenty of money now, I believe, and they're going poor.
That's actually a good point as well. Newcastle could come in. Now, the prospect of Newcastle, they're on a bit of a downward turn now, and Europe, I think, is going to affect them an awful lot. They haven't really spent the big money yet because maybe of financial fair play, and they're trying to get sponsors in like Nike and so all that to have an excuse to spend the money. All right, they're not going to make the long contracts that Chelsea are doing, so they've got the money. They're richer than Manchester City after all, with their owners. That's what we've been told, that they can spend the money. But I think probably an Arsenal or Tottenham is probably the likely destination at the moment, because I think Arsenal probably do need a striker, 20 goal a season striker. Gabriel Jesus is a good player, but he's injury prone. Even at City, I don't think he scored that many goals because I know he had Aguero ahead of him. But I think one of those clubs are going to come in next summer, if not 2 years. But I think 3 or 4. I can't see if he particularly performs the way he's been performing. The money someone's going to flash the money in front of Brighton, 100 million sterling now, and I think they'll